What's up, guys? I'm Brandon Lilly, and you're listening to Lionheart Radio. These days, for me, training is quite a bit different. My goals are still to become stronger than I've ever been, to be highly competitive. But right now, because of the knee injury that I've had and the subsequent 13 surgeries, going straight forward isn't the best option. So I'm doing a lot more of hypertrophy style training, more of just a strict bodybuilding split. Chest on Mondays, International Chest Day on Mondays, kind of arms and shoulders on Tuesdays, back on Wednesdays, and then chest again on Thursdays, arms on Friday, back on Fridays, and every single day doing something high level for my legs. But the overwhelming emphasis is on movement, the ability to move, the ability to be flexible. I'm not training really, really heavy right now because I'm also bringing my body weight down. And for me personally, from a head case standpoint, if I start lifting weights that I know I should move relatively easily and they feel heavy, my ego kind of steps in and kind of bucks me a little bit. I'll try to put a lot of weight back on. But when I competed in England last month, I was down 48 pounds at the weigh-ins over my beginning weight, and I set body weight PRs. And I know I'm doing the right things and I'm going the right direction. It's still hard for me because I've always wanted to be the biggest guy. I've always wanted to be the strongest guy. And looking in the mirror and seeing myself getting smaller and then reinforcing that with the weights feeling heavier might be a little bit too much for me right now. So I'm staying away from it until I get to a reasonable body weight where I'm comfortable, I'm happy, and then I'm going to shift back over to the heavier weight stuff.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Lionheart Radio. We are currently in the beginning stages of summer, and it doesn't matter if you are a gym rat or a weekend warrior or an endurance athlete or some combination of all of them, kind of like myself. Everybody has one thing on their mind, and that is looking good naked. Everybody wants to look good and have some payoff for all of the hard work that they're doing behind the scenes. Everybody at Lionheart Radio is no different, from the host to the people that we have working behind the scenes. Now, if there is one thing that separates us apart, it's essentially the fact that we are not willing to sell you any bullshit. So what we've done is we've taken out the whole crash diet. We've saved you the 6 weeks to the next six-pack plan. And we've taken all of the knowledge that we have, collectively pooled it together, and put it in a document, a book, that you can download for free on lionheartrad.io. In that book, we have things that are going to help you get sustainably lean. We've got which workouts will help you burn more fat. We have tips on how to keep track of your daily calories and nutrition. And we've even got a glossary in the back with a list of movements and how you can plug them into your programming when you are looking for a desired result. Now, just like the show, everything is free. Go to lionheartrad.io and download your free ebook. As always, thank you for taking this journey with us. We will see you in the gym or at the beach. All right, well, welcome back to Lionheart Radio. I'm your host, Rick Alexander, founder of Lou Aviv in San Diego, California. And today, my guest is Brandon Lilly. He is the author of The Cube Method and 365 Strong. And he's well positioned to write a book on strength. As his raw powerlifting total, he's posted 2,110 pounds and 2,612 pounds with multiply gear. For the listeners that might not be familiar, I know we've talked about this on earlier episodes, but when we talk total in powerlifting, we're talking the sum of your squat, bench, and deadlift. So go ahead and add those up and see how you compare. Brandon Lilly, thanks for being on today.
Hey, thanks for having me. And one more total to throw at you, not because you got anything wrong there, but just I'm proud of the fact that I did it.
Sure.
The 2110 was done in a belt only. I did a 2237 with belt and knee wraps, which is 1,015 kilos. And then the 2612 was done in multiply. But yeah, the 2237 is my best total, what I consider raw. But I did both of my best totals in Australia, one at Pro Raw and one at Capo.
2237. What was your squat, if you remember, with just knee wraps?
It was 843.
There you go. Jesus. Where did Where did your strength journey begin? Where did you even start with all of this?
Believe it or not, I was a soccer player, and I was really, really good soccer player, as a matter of fact. And I was a swimmer, and I was also into distance sports. I cycled, I ran, and as I was getting closer and closer to college, I made some decisions. One, to leave basketball, which was my second love. Well, my first love was always baseball, but I had a little trouble with the curve. So I was a little bit better basketball player than I was a baseball player, and I was a much better soccer player than I was anything else. And I was going to be going to college for that. And actually, I was in contact with Ray Messer, who is, or was at the time, the U.S. men's soccer coach, and he was coaching at Earlham in Indiana. And his biggest motivator or encouragement to me to ensure that I would be able to play for him was to play at a bigger school. So I went to a very small school in a very small town. Across town there was a bigger school, so I switched schools, but I didn't change residence. And a lot of states adopted this idea that an anti-recruitment law would be the only way you could change schools was if you changed residence. And I got hung up in that law, it was just black and white, but it was being passed right at the time that I was transferring in the state of Kentucky. And actually, the appeal went all the way up to where I was sitting in front of the president of the KHSAA, and he rejected the allowing of me to play sports at the new school because I would have been advancing my level of sportsmanship, I guess. If I'd gone the other way, if I'd gone to the smaller school, I would have been okay.
This is
But
high
because,
school?
yeah, this was high school. And I was 16, 17 years old. And I was a pretty good kid, pretty good student, but when you took away the one thing that I cared about and you put me in a new school, I mean, it was like a recipe for disaster. I started getting in trouble, started skipping schools, just started kind of falling to the side a little bit. And I had a coach named Travis Lynch. He was a football strength coach, and he was also my history teacher. And he pulled me aside and he was like, "Look, kid, you got one or two choices here, and you're making some bad ones. So let me help you give you some good ones." He was like, "You should meet me after school at 5 o'clock, and I'll put you through a workout, and you'll be so tired you won't be able to get into trouble." So he put me through a workout. I loved it, but the one thing that he kept saying to me is he was like, whatever you got inside of you, whatever you're mad about, whatever's making you feel bad, just get it out. And he had me on one of those hammer strength pec machines, and he just said, "Keep going, just keep going, just keep getting it out." And here I am, 17 years old, just start bawling, crying. Didn't know why, didn't understand it at all, but he just kept encouraging me, and then it was like I started screaming. I was getting, like energetic and whatever. I probably did 100 reps, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was really good for me, and it was therapeutic as much as it was training. So that was the beginning of it, and from there it kind of kept going and kept going, and I kind of became so involved in that around school, I started becoming known as one of the stronger kids. And then I saw the football record board, and, being a non-football player, I wanted to chase those numbers. So that went well. And then that led me training at another gym, met another guy that was coaching powerlifting and so on. And he kind of took me under his wing, showed me the West Side method, gave me, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 Powerlifting USA magazines. And, the rest is kind of history from there.
Yeah, I'd imagine football players were fucking pumped when a soccer player started taking their records down.
Well, what's crazy about it is I was only about 175 pounds, but man, I got strong really really fast, and I can remember pushing to weigh 180 185 pounds and thinking that was going to be big, but I was benching right at 300 at that weight, which for a high school kid, I think 300 is a pretty good mark. I don't care what you weigh in high school, 300 is a pretty strong number.
Yeah.
And eventually I worked my way up to about 185 or 190 before I came back down to 175 in better condition. And I ended up benching 325 at 175 my senior year. But that was not the norm for me. The first time I ever picked up a true weight, I mean, it was a struggle for me. I took out 95 pounds on the bench press, and it nearly took my head off.
Yeah.
And I think that's been one of the reasons that I've been able to have success as a coach is because I'm not one of these guys that just picked up a sport and was good at it. I've been at the bottom, and I haven't quite been all the way to the top of the mountain, but I've been pretty close. So wherever you are, I can have a pretty good relation point to that point.
Yeah, so you earned that 300 pounds if you if 95 pounds was heavy.
Yeah, I mean, and I credit that to Coach Lynch. I mean, I definitely would have. I was one of those kids that wanted to bench every day, do arms every day, and he taught me the ins and outs, kind of the ballet, I guess you could say, of lifting. He explained to me at a very early point why I did certain things and why I didn't do certain things, and he was always the crazy thing about Coach Lynch is he no longer teaches because of his style. The sad thing about our world today is a coach like him that would take a kid like me that nobody else was really paying attention to, get me involved in something positive, teach you that it's okay for, and this is going to sound a little bit controversial, but it's okay for a coach or a teacher to hug you and tell you that it's going to be all right, that life is bigger than this moment. You know what I mean? Like he just
Hmm.
doesn't fit in. He just doesn't fit into the world today because people would think that's inappropriate. The most affectionate, caring teacher I ever had, and actually taught me that it was okay for a guy to say I love you. You know what I mean? Like whenever I graduated, I just never forget that moment. He was like, "Man, I love you." My dad didn't even tell me he loved me whenever I graduated. He was just like, "I'm
Yeah.
proud of you, son." But Coach Lynch taught me a lot about being a man in that regard, and it's just a shame that he left the school system because he could have done a lot of good. But in this world today, he just wasn't made for teaching.
Yeah, I was actually going to point that out that I don't think even the first part with getting you into working out even hard, I don't think that would fly these days,
You know,
unfortunately.
no, it's absolutely not. And there's a great movie. I can't remember what it's called, but I'll think of it in a minute. But it actually touches on that. A guy becomes a teacher, and he's Adrian Brody's the actor. He comes into a class, and this one girl is really, really down, but he pays attention to her and he gives her hope and so on and so forth. And in this one pivotal moment, she comes over and tries to give him a hug, and he's frozen because he can't. You know what I mean? He can't give her that hug because he knows what will happen from the standpoint of the school board and whatnot. And she goes home and kills herself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that I was suicidal, but I am telling you right now, if it wasn't for Coach Lynch, I know my life path would have been a lot different. And
Hmm.
because he was willing to show an interest and because he did care, it made a huge impact on me. I mean, he pretty much he and Miss Waterbury pretty much held my hand as I wrote my portfolio, so I would graduate and go to college and everything. I mean, I look back on those two and I hated them both, like for many reasons as teachers, but they impacted my life much bigger than I ever thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I tell people all the time if you were to taken lacrosse or and football away from me in high school, I mean I'd have been high and drunk every day because I would have had essentially no reason not to be. So just giving you that outlet is,
Sure.
extremely important.
Yep.
So the very first thing that he got you into was or that you started really powerlifting was that West Side method?
No, I kind of did. Coach Lynch had me on like a 5x5.
Okay.
Uh, very, very basic stuff. And that, intertwined with some of the Jay Cutler bicep blast workouts that I saw in Flex Magazine or, the Dorian Yates stuff. But actually, my first love of my own training was Mike Menser. I picked up his HIT book and read that cover to cover and kind of identified with him. If you've ever read that book at all, he talks a little bit about his highs and his lows, and how he would write and he was always passionate and all this stuff, and how that he wanted to have so much more life outside of training. That's why he wanted to condense his training. And here I am, an 18, 19-year-old kid, just looking to have a good time and party and do all that stuff, but still get to the gym too. So the HIT system fit very well. Plus, it seemed like it made me tougher. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
a
There's
lot
a
of
mental
guys
toughness aspect to it.
yeah, and a lot of guys were just going in there and just, going through the same routine. And here I am milking every set for everything it's worth. And it was a test for me to do that stuff. But then eventually the West Side system came along. I got some of the videos. I saw Chuck Vogelpohl lift, and the rest is like once you see that, it's kind of like, oh, I got to do that. He's unbelievable.
Right. Did you go? Did you work out at Westside?
I did for a year, but it wasn't until much, much later when I was invited.
So yeah, I've actually followed the cube method before, and you can actually tell that you definitely had some bodybuilding style influence in your programming. I
Hmm.
haven't. I'm not familiar with 365 strong. Who would use the cube method versus who would use 365 strong?
So let's kind of look at this in a creation standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So the cube method might be the embryo, you know,
Oh,
the
creation of life standpoint.
right,
Okay.
well, the creation of the method,
Okay.
and then kingpin is kind of like you have a fetus, and then what I'm doing now, which is called the cube predator, is a full born baby. And what it really amounts to is it's an evolution of my understanding of people, the feedback that I've gotten from clients and things like that, and I've applied it. The cube method, as it was written, was basically, I didn't know that I was writing a book, to be honest. I was writing down what I was doing. I was basically doing training logs and explaining what I was doing and so on and so forth. Had great result. And when I was with Juggernaut, Chad Smith packaged all that together and said, look, let's elaborate on these articles a little bit and put it down, and we'll make it an ebook. And that went really well. A lot of people picked it up, used it, and ran with it. So the basic concept for me is the rotation of the intensities. So many people got stuck on the idea that when I bench, I did floor press or whatever like that. That's not necessarily the case. It's just what I was doing at that time, and not necessarily realizing that it was going to be as big as it was, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go back and make some changes. And when I did the changes, I adapted that for the Kingpin version, the 365 strong, and I made some changes and did more explanation and got everything back to the competition style lift. And then on the Predator, it's actually a little bit more of a high intensity style: two bench days, two squat days, one deadlift day, but the intensities are still rotated. And the reason that I intertwine hypertrophy in there so much, if you look at the human body, through your training, you should have an understanding of what's working and what's not. And for me, if the form is working, which always technique and form should be paramount, that should be your first go-to. If that's working well, if you're struggling in a lift, what portion of the lift is struggling and how can you fix that? Well, you fix a muscle weakness by making it bigger and stronger, hypertrophy. And I think a lot of coaches try to milk the CNS in that regard, like, let's shy away from the accessory stuff. To me, everybody does the big three right. The guys that really, really get ahead are the ones that figure out how to train the weaknesses, how to do the hypertrophy work in such a way that it complements the big three.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually, just as you were talking to me, I was texting with Dan Green, and he is a guy who is, I mean, he's made his whole career off of hypertrophy work. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
he's a beautiful squatter, beautiful deadlifter, good bencher. And if you watch him train, and I've trained with him, he will bury you with volume, and a lot of guys don't understand that, but Dan looks the way he looks for a reason. People are like, oh, Dan's genetics this, Dan's genetics that. No, you didn't see Dan 7, 8, 9 years ago when he was just a regular guy. Dan has built himself into that through hypertrophy work. And I think that when powerlifters got so separated and focused on the squat, bench, and deadlift, they kind of lost something there. So I wanted to bring that aspect of it back and get people focusing on just training hard, like no matter what you're doing, get in there and do the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something you mentioned about Dan Green, and then also something you mentioned about yourself, which is whenever somebody is talking to me about trying to find a coach or trying to find training, there's a lot of people out there that are at a very high level, and that's because they're naturally gifted. So if you can vet your sources and you can find the people that have battled through injuries, they started from, look at what they look like when they started. These are the kind of people that actually know how you're going to make progress throughout all of the different adversities that are going to come along the way through your journey.
Sure.
And you do online programming, correct?
Yeah. And, I kind of want to use this as a soapbox for a minute.
Yeah.
Uh, I could sit here and spout off all the great things that I've done as far as coaching. I've coached 20 men over 2,000 pound totals, and I've coached, 26 girls over 1,000 pound totals. And I used to think that was my selling point. I used to think that was great. But what I soon realized is those people were going to get those numbers no matter what. So these coaches that always tout, well, look at this person I've coached and look at this person I've coached. When I was at Westside, I mean, there were literally people. Matt Dimmel died training at Westside to be the best. There are powerlifters that I know right now. I considered myself one of them before my injury that would have prided myself on dying to be the best powerlifter in the world. So you tell me that you don't think I could do any program and find success with that mentality? You know
Sure.
what I mean? Like Phil Jackson coached Michael Jordan, right? He also coached Ron Harper. Ron Harper did not become Michael Jordan. Phil Jackson was still the same caliber coach. Good coaches are the ones who can take a middle of the road athlete and make them very good. The elite will always find a way to be elite. So if
Mm-hmm.
your coach is somebody that's selling you on the fact that they've coached, you know, numerous top end athletes, go a little bit lower. Look at the next tier. How many people have they coached from good to great? You know, because the great to elite, those are the people that are going to do it on their own anyway, no matter what. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I've looked at training manuals that I had from, even a few years back before I was doing the Q method, and my training made no sense whatsoever, but I got better. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like because I refused to fail.
Right.
So I take more pride in taking an athlete that doesn't necessarily want to be the best in the world, but then they start competing and then they get competitive with themselves and then they do some pretty great things. One of my guys that I work with now, he went from a 315 squat when we started, and now he's squatting just over 600 pounds in a little over 18 months. It wasn't that he couldn't squat more when we started. He just didn't think he ever wanted to do anything bigger than that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So when we started working together, started coming on pretty quickly, put on a nice little amount of size, and now he's squatting 600 pounds, and it's like maybe he'll squat 700 one day. I don't know. Will he be the best in the world? Probably not. But damn, 600-pound squat for a guy that never thought he would do that is pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, yeah, it definitely is. So if you're here's the thing though, if you're a coach and you're in a gym, there's tricks
Yep.
that you can. There's a lot of tricks that coaches can use in order to help people get through different mental aspects of getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
From an online perspective, when you get these guys or girls that are middle of the pack, how are you coaching them to get better through the barriers, like you say?
Well, for me, anything in powerlifting, especially, we focus on one rep so much, right? I mean, that's what we compete at.
Right.
Let's just use, for example, we have a guy that wants to bench 400 pounds. He's a 370-pound bencher, and he fails at 400 every single time, right? Well, the situation that I give him is when I wanted to bench 600 pounds, I had to look at how I bench 500 pounds. When I bench 500 pounds, I could do 405 for about 7 or 8 reps. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I rationalized that if I wanted to do 600 pounds, I needed to do 500 pounds for 7 or 8 reps. Well, when I was doing my warm ups, I was doing 500 for two, 515 or 525 for one, 550 for one, and 570 for one. No way in the world was that going to elicit a 600-pound bench press. So I had to go back and I had to learn how to build 500 into a three and then 525 into a two and so on. Again, it's not always moving forward, it's figuring out how to do things that you've already done better and more. So a lot of my clients, the way that the wave works for me now is in a 10-week program, we'll have an 8 rep PR, a 6 rep PR, maybe a 6 and a 5 or something like that, but an 8, a 5, and a 3 rep PR. And then at the culmination of the 10 weeks or the 15 weeks, however long we do it, that's where you do your 1 rep PR. But if you can do an 8 rep PR, good.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get to the 5 rep PR. If you can't do the 5 rep PR, we have to adjust. We know something's not right. If you can do the 5 rep PR and you can do the 3 rep PR, then why couldn't you do the 1 rep PR? I don't consistently have to load you up with a 1 rep maximum to know that you're getting better. So I show these people all the time success on top of success on top of success, not only through the rep PRs, but quality of lift PRs. If you send me a video, and let's say you squat 400 for two, and the first one's awesome and the second one's slow, but in 2 weeks you send that same video back and you squat 400 for two easy reps, you got stronger.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of coaches won't tell you that you got stronger because it's not a three written down, but you did the same amount of reps better. I'll take that as a PR all day long.
Yep.
The other way that I'll do it is I'll give people time. Okay, how many reps can you do in 30 seconds with this weight. There again, I have something to work forward with. Can you do that same weight for 31 seconds next time? Can you do one more rep in 30 seconds? Can we do more weight in 30 seconds? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I try to build PRs in a multitude of different ways. So if something goes wrong, they've still got 3 or 4 chances that day to redeem the workout. Because
Mhm.
so many times in my life, I would have a bad lift and it would ruin the whole workout. It would ruin my whole next day until my next workout. And I just try to remove that aspect. I try to keep everything positive.
Yeah, I see. So from a physiological standpoint, you're using basically the tools that they have, or the tool you're using is by taking the numbers that they have and creating more time under tension
Sure.
with
You
with
can't
better
you can't
quality.
make you can't make something more than what they are. You know,
Hmm.
if you're a 200-pound squatter, if you want to squat 300 pounds, it doesn't matter how bad you want to if you don't do the right things to make that happen. So I know the things that will make that happen: linear progression of the lift, the main lift, and then hypertrophy work to diminish weaknesses.
Hmm.
You know, that's the main thing, and focus on doing things right. If you do things right well enough and often enough, success will come.
So I've seen in your bios that you've also spoken to other populations that are not powerlifters. You've worked with SEALs, other special forces. How does advice differ, and how can they use powerlifting kind of to increase their performance for more of the hybrid athletes that are going to be listening to this?
Well, the hybrid athlete should hear this. The big three are the best mass builders, CNS conditioners, and overall, I guess competitive lifts. I really enjoy those. They're easy to coach. The one reason that I talk a lot to football coaches and these organizations is they still rely on a lot on Olympic lifting, and that's awesome if you're an Olympic lifter. They're really difficult to master. They take a lot of time to coach, and the risk of injury is very, very high.
Agreed.
I think the risk of injury with the power lifts, and even in these special forces type situations, I'm not worried about a bench press. I'll switch them over to a military press or something along those lines. But the squat and the deadlift, those are two natural movements that you're going to see every day in possibly combat situation. Having to squat down with a rucksack, or having to maybe shoulder a friend or a body on your shoulders, or having to pick heavy things up off the ground, those make sense to me. So why don't we train them that way? But applying the science of it all, these guys are made to go, 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 go. I'm not ever going to worry about their 1 rep max. It's ridiculous. I need to worry about a 5 or a 3 rep max for these guys because I know they are ego driven. They want to see big numbers on the bar. That's good. We put those kind of things out there, but a lot of their working stuff is going to be in the 6 to 12 range.
Hmm.
Lightened weight, because we don't want to pack a ton of mass on these guys. We want to keep them agile, we want to keep them moving, but we want to keep them strong relative to what they're required to do. And one of the things that I speak about heavily when I talk to these guys, and maybe you'll understand this really quickly, is a lot of the people that I've talked to use RPE. I love RPE training, the rate of perceived exertion.
Hmm.
Well, guess who you're talking to when you're talking to a Navy SEAL or a MARSOC Marine, or whatever. You've
People that,
conditioned
yeah,
you have conditioned this guy to say nothing is a 10.
right.
You know what I mean? So their overuse injuries relative to RPE training can become very, very high. Well, we just ran 3 miles, we just swam 2 miles, and now we're coming in here to max out a deadlift. Well, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. You
Right.
know, um, we need to pick our max out days and do that first, and then do the other training behind the weight training. There's just simple things that is overlooked in regards to training for these type of groups. They kind of have this adapt or die mentality, and not the actual soldiers, but the people who are running things. Like, oh, they'll either get through it or they won't. That's absolutely the worst way to look at it. We should be grooming these guys for success and helping them avoid these overuse injuries that we see so commonly. I mean, you have these guys do a brutal workout and you ask for an RPE and they say it's a 6,
Right.
and then you say, what conditioned this to be a 6? Well, I was in Fallujah, and everything that was going on there. That's my 10.
Right.
That's my 10 relative to this 6. So are you going to push that guy to a 9? No, you're going to break him down. You have to give them things that make sense from a scientific training standpoint, that will make them better, that won't push them based on a psychological evaluation of their training and what they're doing, but from a physical standpoint. This will
Hmm.
work. This will make you better. Believe in it. Do it. Good.
Sure. That being said, are there any tools that you use to find objective numbers such as HRV work or anything like that?
You know, with these guys, like I said, I'll have them a lot of times take what they think is their maximum, but we'll scale it back to 70%. That's kind of the number that I usually fall for is 70%. And we'll have them do an evaluation of around a 3 to 5 rep max with that, see how they move, and then we'll scale everything off of that.
Gotcha.
I don't see these guys, like I said, ever needing to do a 1 rep maximum. I mean, especially you know near a combat session, because we're trying to prep them for something bigger than the gym, right?
Sure.
So if we can keep their encouragement and their excitement going with rep maxes, that's the best way to go. If you want to hold it in, like a team specific contest where you do a 1 rep max or something like that, all that's all well and good, but you have to emphasize the form. And these guys are respectful to themselves and to their craft. They understand the importance of form if you preach it to them. If you don't, they'll get sloppy as hell because they just have that ego driven,
Yep.
I want to win, and that's fine too. But as their coach and as the person who's over top of them, you have to be reinforcing form, 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 just like when they draw their weapon. If they get loose with their weapon, somebody's going to get hurt. If you get loose in the gym, somebody's going to get hurt.
Sure. So I've heard you say train like a strongman, diet like a bodybuilder, mobilize like a weightlifter, and think like a powerlifter.
That's right.
That stands out. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, Dan and I were just talking about this in relation to Kazmaier and talking about how we're so focused now on the most amount of output with the least amount of training, right? We're
Sure.
trying to get we're trying to get the most out of the least.
Efficiency.
I will never forget a quote that Kazmaier gave me. If you ever look at his training logs, they were massive in the volume that he would do and the weight that he would do. And he talked about forced adaptation. So he was like, I did that much because I knew or I was afraid that another guy would do more. You know what I mean? And now we're trying to do, well, if I do one more rep, then I'm going to break down and be overtrained. Well,
Hmm.
that's kind of bullshit. I always talk about it in these terms because I worked in a garage. I was a mechanic. I look at my hands, they're really thick and dense. I look at mechanics' hands. Most of their hands never start out that way. But when their food and their rent and their livelihood is on the table, somehow they find a way to keep turning those wrenches 8 hours a day, every single day. Their hands don't get overtrained. Sure, they get achy, they get sore, they get knotted up and whatnot, but they get fat, they get thick, they get stronger. Imagine if you did that every day with your back or with your hands or your pecs or your legs or whatever. If you do a little bit more and more and more, that's what we're seeing with strongman. Because strongman is not a want to sport, it's a have to sport.
Hmm.
Powerlifting is, I want to deadlift 800 pounds. Well, strongman has become this competition over here, and is a big one. The deadlift is 900 pounds. Well, if you can't deadlift 900 pounds, sorry.
Yep.
So you have to figure out a way to get there. And most of the time, that's not by doing less, it's by doing more and mobilizing. So many of our powerlifters get so bound up and so like they get what we call the West Side waddle,
Hmm.
because they get so big. But you
Yep.
see big men like Zadrunas, you see big men like Thor, you see big men like Brian Shaw that move really, really well. You look at Eddie Hall, who I would argue is the strongest static human alive. He doesn't move very well because I think he has overcompensated his strength and limited his ability to move. Whereas
Hmm.
a Big Z, who is unbelievably good with his feet for as strong as he is, I think he could be stronger if he focused on all out strength. Or if you want to go back even further, look at Pujanowski or Yoko Ahola. Those guys that were infinitely strong with rep work, they would just go for days and days and days, but they got stronger in different planes. Powerlifters have gotten strong in one plane, and I think it's to our own detriment.
Yeah, I agree. I think too when you start to really pronate like that, you're strong in certain areas, and then you're going to be weak in certain areas, and that
Yep.
that slight tinge is going to be all it takes to fuck you up.
Yeah. And then the mobilization, like a weightlifter, I mean, again, look at how powerlifters are so bound up. We're walking like stick figures, you know what I mean? And not stick figures in a good way, like we're bound up and we can't bend.
Hmm.
And I can remember times in my own life when tying my shoes was harder than squatting 800 pounds, and that's not a good thing. And it's just because of laziness. It's not because it's going to impact your sport. It's not because it's going to be a detriment to what you do. It's simple fucking laziness. The
Yeah.
fact that you won't get on the ground and take 10 or 15 minutes to better your lifting and to better your life is just, it's asinine.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea of thinking like a power lifter, having that one shot, one kill mentality. Like, I've got one chance to go big and do this right. It's all on the line. That's what I mean by that. That's the one thing I love about powerlifting is it's all on you in the moment. You either lift it or you don't. It's not bodybuilding where it's objective and you got five different people with five different opinions. It's you versus the weight. You have to be man enough to pick it up or woman enough to pick it up, and you have to be a special kind of person to believe in yourself enough to do
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna print that quote out and put it in my gym. I like it.
that.
With all of your work, your competitions, your books, your seminars, your talking, what do you want the world to kind of take away from your journey? Like, what do you want your legacy to be when people think Brandon Lilly?
Well, first of all, I think that beyond the sport, I would like for people to think that I was a good person.
Sure.
Um, I would, second of all, probably in line with that is that I was a good dad. And then third, relative to the sport, is that I gave everything that I had, whether it was my mind when my legs wouldn't work, whether it was my body when my head wouldn't work. You know what
Yep.
I mean?
Yep.
Uh, I want people to know that it's not been about anything more than just giving everything I can give to the sport. I love the sport. It probably, some people look at it and think, man, that guy's got it made. I wish I had his life. Well, you can. I'm just a nobody that put everything I had and let the chips fall where they may. But I believed in myself. I believed in what I was doing, and I guess at the end of the day, I just want people to see that they can respect that I gave everything that I had. As far as a lifter, again, the same thing. I was a guy that trained with an intensity that made me who I was as a lifter, and I gave my body to the sport. I gave my body to be the best that I could, and sport kind of kicked my ass, but I didn't stay down. I'm still coming back. That's what I want to be known for is toughness.
Yeah. Well, I think coming back from all those injuries is definitely putting you on the right track. Can you talk a little bit about your mindset and kind of your strategy when it comes to coming back from an injury? I know you've talked a little bit about it in the icebreaker, but
Well, when you come back from an injury, I think the first thing is, and this answer might be a little bit of a change of direction from what you were expecting, but I think the first thing you have to do is you really have to humble yourself, and that's very hard. Like for me, I can tell you, I was an egomaniacal terror when I was at my strongest. And I think there's a little bit of that you have to have where you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof and nothing can touch you.
hmm
But when you're damaged and when you're broken, you have to let people in. You have to learn to let people love you. You have to learn to let people do things for you that are so humbling and humiliating that you can't do them yourself. Um, and then you have to kind of get right with yourself. You have to figure out, what do I do with this? How do I process this? And for me, the story that I tell over and over that changes everything is somebody's got it worse than you. You know what I mean? No matter how bad you are, somebody that didn't deserve that. Like, I chose to compete the day that I got hurt. That was a choice. And while people may say I deserved it, maybe people may say that I didn't deserve it. There's a kid out there with some terminal disease that did nothing wrong to anybody ever. Um, there's a man or a woman out there that's suffering with some disease that they don't deserve. And I tell people all the time, there's people that got it way worse than whatever this injury is. And you start there. And my third day out of surgery, I was probably at my low point where, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to walk again. I'm not going to be able to lift again. They told me I wouldn't walk for 10 months. And I got a message from a guy named Mike Ingerson. He's followed me for years and years. Um, and always just been a guy that reached out, happy birthday, man. Hope you're doing well, blah, blah, blah. Just always been a consistent person that stood out as they remembered things. They sent me messages.
sure.
And he's in a wheelchair. And here I am thinking about, like, I mean, honestly, I was thinking about killing myself. I was thinking about just going away and never coming back again or whatever. And he was like, hey, buddy, I hope you're doing well. I know you're probably pretty down right now. But he said, I wanted to tell you, I wake up every morning excited. And I was like, why the fuck do you wake up excited? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I know that every morning when I wake up, I got a chance to move my legs again. And he was like, And if I can move my legs again, then I can walk. And if I can walk, I can move mountains. And I look down and I can move my feet and I can move my legs a little bit. Like I couldn't walk, but I could do more than he could. And that kind of set me straight as like, you know what, this guy's got a great outlook and I'm better off than he is right now, but I'm worse off because I don't even believe in myself, you know?
Yeah.
So in that moment, I kind of stopped feeling sorry for myself. And like I said, they told me I wouldn't walk for 10 months and I had a nerve block in. I was, you know, casted from hip to ankle in both legs. And I just pulled the covers back and I swiveled off to the side of the bed, which was stupid. I was on a ton of painkillers, but I grabbed the walker and I walked about 3 steps. When I say walk, I mean I slid my feet. I was doing a tricep dip, basically,
Yeah. Yeah.
just enough to slide my feet over to the chair. And I plopped down in the chair. And the doctor came in and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, you told me I wouldn't walk for 10 months, and I did it in 3 days." So that kind of got the cycle of me being competitive again. How quickly can I do this? Some of that good, some of that bad. But you have to find a point, no matter where you are, of understanding how badly you're hurt, what it's going to take to overcome that, and what you should do right and wrong moving forward. I came back and deadlifted 710 pounds 3 months after this surgery. You know what I mean? It was insanity.
Jesus.
But
Yeah.
but I did that because I thought people were going to forget about me. You know what I mean? I did it from an ego point. That probably set me back more than it kept me forward. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
If I had just stayed the course and done some rehabilitation work, built myself up in 10 months' time, I probably would have been okay. But I kept stressing the joint to the point that it got infected again. It rejected some of the repair work. I was my own worst enemy because I couldn't see the bigger picture. All I saw was what was right in front of me. And I think that's just it. With enough time, injuries will heal. But want to doesn't make tissue or tendon heal.
Right.
Just, you know, so let it do its thing. Take the rest, enjoy the rest, look at different aspects of your life that you've neglected, because if you get to a certain level, a high enough level, I'm certain that people are neglecting their family, they're neglecting their friends. Um, but look at those aspects. And now that I'm back or coming back um, to a very high level again, those pieces fit a lot better. Like I realize that my friends don't care if I deadlift 900 pounds. Like they don't care, you know. And I'll never forget the day I bent 600 pounds raw in competition. I called my son and I was so excited to tell him. I was like, Aiden, Daddy bench 600 pounds. And he goes, okay, well, I finished my Lego set. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he didn't care.
Yeah. That'll give you perspective.
And the reality of it is, I was his Superman the day he was born. You know, being there and being a good dad and um, doing things for him that a parent should will mean more to him than a 600-pound bench press ever will. Like,
Hmm.
he has no grasp of what 600 pounds is yet. I mean, when he's older, he might drink a beer and think that's cool. You know, like my dad benched 600 pounds one time, but
Right.
right now it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He cares if I'm at his games. He cares if I'm there building Legos with him, you know?
Hmm.
So if you're in an injury spot, if it's minor, just do the rehab work, enjoy it. If it's major, kind of like mine was, really sit back and do some thinking, read some books, learn about training, look at different aspects of training. You know, all this stuff that is out there. When I got injured, I thought I knew everything. And now that I'm 3 years removed from the injury and I've been reading and talking to more coaches and all this stuff, I don't feel like I can learn enough. I feel like I'm at the base of the mountain again. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I feel like you can get a little too full of yourself,
Hmm.
and an injury has a really good way of humbling you again. So, you know, not that everybody needs humbled, but I certainly did.
No, I think you get moving so fast in life and you're hungry and you're looking for the next step. And sometimes you just got to get, punched in the face in order to get that introspection you need.
Oh, for sure.
So now that you're 3 years removed from that injury and you're on the mend and you're hungry, what are you most excited about right now that you have going on?
Honestly, that I'm alive. Um, and I don't say that, tongue in cheek. I say that seriously. I have so much going in life that I'm thankful for and I'm happy about, and the people that I've connected with um, through this sport and on the fringe of the sport. So I'm really, really thankful for that. But from a competitive standpoint, um, I'm doing a deadlift in July. It's kind of a test the waters at my lower body weight. just to see how I feel. But I'm actually going to not compete for the rest of the year. I'm going to take the rest of the year, try to build myself back up um, at a lighter body weight, and then in the spring do something big. But I do think my best numbers lie ahead of me. I don't think I'm done by a long shot, but I also know I have to be strategic. I know that I can't go out and compete 6, 7 times a year like I used to, maybe once or twice a year. But I very, very much want to deadlift 400 kilos in the future. I've pulled 840 since my injury, so another 20 kilos on top of that. I think it's possible with better training because I'm training better now than I was when I pulled the 840.
Sure.
Um, I've surpassed my squat that I fell with in the gym. I would like to put that on the platform, and then I would like to bench over 600 pounds again. So I have all these goals, and I have a lot going on, but I just need to concentrate them and realize that it's going to be one foot in front of the other. But my ultimate goal is to keep doing this until I'm 40. That would give me a good 20 plus year run in the sport, and then I'll still probably kick around and do some deadlifts or something. But I just know that I only have so many big squats left in these knees,
Yeah.
and I want to walk away from the sport. I don't want to be broken completely by it. I don't care that I've had injuries. I don't care if more come, but I want to be able to walk away from the sport on my own terms.
Yeah. And I think you're definitely on the right track and ahead of the game as far as your openness to mobility and recovery and all the different things that a lot of people neglect.
For sure.
So we have a couple listener questions, and then we'll get into the Lionheart kicker. So,
Okay.
listener question one is, what is your opinion on the state of strength sports today? That's kind of open ended, but
Well, I think the state of the sports is that they're bigger than ever. They're getting some recognition, and a lot of great things are happening because of that. I think there are people that are capitalizing on the growth of the strength sports that are not reinvesting in the strength sports. They're investing in themselves, and I think that's a bunch of bullshit. So you should really weed out. The biggest company isn't always the best company. There's
mm-hmm.
smaller companies that are actually putting a lot back into this sport, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back for this, but 50 cents of every dollar of every cube method book ever sold has gone back into a military or veterans, some type of charity for veterans. And did I reinvest in the sport? No, but I invested in something. So if there's a company out there that's doing good because of their gain, then I think that's good. But there are so many companies out there that are just profit, profit, profit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going into their pockets. They're not putting it back into the lifters that are supporting them. That's my worry for the sport. But the sport itself is doing amazing. I just wish that the strongest people were rewarded and not the people who showed the most skin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's Instagram too, partly to
Yeah, well,
blame.
people ask me, they see that I have some sponsors. And when I say a sponsor, I mean somebody who actually invests in me. And I don't always mean financially. I mean, they invest in me as a person, they invest in my time, they invest in me as a lifter, and they make my road to competition easier. That's not always a paycheck. Now, that's not a fucking t shirt either. You know what I mean? Like, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody kicks me a t shirt, I'm appreciative, but I'm not going to sit there and ride their jock and say they're sponsoring me. I'll rep their T-shirt because they're cool or whatever. They're my friend, but I'm not going to wear a T-shirt just because it's free, and I'm not going to support something that I don't believe in. So I think a lot of people make those mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
They want to put something out there that they're sponsored.
Yeah.
Well, let's break down what your sponsorship is. You get 3 T-shirts a month. You're worth $18 a month. Okay, so you're worth about 30 cents a day. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's what you're worth to that company. And at that point, you should say fuck off.
Yeah.
You
That's a good
know,
way to look at it.
it's better to be unsponsored and do it your fucking self. I can tell you this right now. This is something I tell kids all the time. I have never ever to this day taken sponsorship money to pay for my travel or my entry to a competition. And I've been all over the world doing this, and I have never ever taken money for that. The sponsorships that I have come in the form of protein, creatine, BCAAs, whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I get some free clothes from Rise Above, Rogue American, Hate Brand, but those are my friends. Like, I'm not looking for a handout. I'm just looking for, I want to support them the best way that I can, and they give me free clothes. I don't sit here and tout them as like they made me or anything like that. I just say, look, buy this brand. They're great people.
Yep.
Their clothes might not even be cool, but they're great people. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But they do make great clothes, so it works.
Yeah, well, and one thing you've done really well is you've embraced being an entrepreneur, which has helped you really, uh, make it in the powerlifting industry.
I'll tell you what, man, I did it all from a cell phone. You know what I mean? Like, you tell me that you can't afford a fucking cell phone, then if you can afford your monthly payment, you can afford to start your own business.
Hmm.
And it starts with one client. Well, how did you get into coaching? You don't start with 50, 60 clients. You start with one, and you treat that motherfucker so good that you get another. And then you treat that person so good that you get another. And it just snowballs. And I mean, if you're worth a shit at all, and that's what you're doing, you're going to find out pretty quickly. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get results and people are going to come to you, or you're going to find out it ain't made for you. But I can
Hmm.
promise you, as glamorous as some people try to make it look, it's a tough job. You know, other people are putting their passion, their hobby, their hard-earned money invested into you to make them better. So you have a huge obligation. It's not something to just use as passive income.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. All right, question two is how do you feel about the saturation of federations and weight classes?
Um, I kind of coined that statement. There's no weight classes in the jungle. And I coined that for my younger lifters who idolize guys like Dan Green or Kevin Oak, these guys that are very, very successful and they make huge weight cuts. I don't fault that at all because they're going for world records. They're going for all time numbers. These kids that are competing for the first time, cutting 10, 15, 20 pounds, stupid.
Mm,
I understand from a growth standpoint in the sport, we need multiple federations and we need multiple weight classes. It keeps things competitive. It keeps people coming into the sport. Somebody that may never ever compete more than once gets to go to a competition. They get a chance at a trophy. They get a chance to win. I'm fine with that from the standpoint of the good of the sport. From the standpoint of me as a competitor, if you lift the biggest weight, you're the fucking top dog, period. You
yep.
know what I mean? Like, don't come at me with your body ratio stuff. The salmon never eats the bear.
Yeah.
That
Fuck yeah.
always fucking eats the salmon. So,
Hmm.
in this sport, it's who picks up the most weight. And like, I respect those guys that are lighter weight classes and doing some big things. But who do you want to see? A guy pick up 1,000 pound deadlift or a guy picking up 600 because he weighs 114? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yep.
it just is what it is. And I mean, maybe I'm an asshole for saying that, but I have to think that way. I have to think of myself as, being the strongest.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's like that goes back to think like a power lifter or think like a strongman, right?
Yeah, yeah. Think like a powerlifter.
Yeah,
Live like a
train like a strongman. My bad.
Yep. You're getting close.
Yeah. So, well, when I fucking print it out and put it under my squat rack, I'll get it. So the Lionheart kicker is the final questions we try to ask every guest that comes on the show. If you could give advice based on everything that you know, it can be powerlifting or it can be life advice that was guaranteed that it'd be translated to every language and everybody in the world would hear it. What would you tell everybody?
Go find your mom, go find your dad, and say I'm sorry. Then say I love you. And from there, go find your friends, hold them close. Go find those people that you love and care about, hold them close. And anybody that doesn't matter, tell them to fuck off. That's life. And lifting, it's the tortoise and the hare. There's going to be some people that do amazing things very, very early on, and there's going to be people who take a long time to get to the top. But what I have seen, tested, untested, genetically gifted or not, if you stick around long enough and you do the right things long enough on a long enough timeline, things seem to equalize. The drug numbers are not that much bigger than the tested numbers. So if you're out there and you're having this question of should I start using drugs, should I stop using drugs, whatever,
Hmm.
think about this. What do you believe in? Don't let the sport dictate what you believe in. What do you believe in and make the choice from there, but make an educated choice and realize that no matter what, it's going to take a long time to get to the top, but anything is possible in this sport. And I truly believe that if you work at it and you do the right things, you can get anywhere as you want to be. That's life too.
Yeah, you're an introspective guy. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Lilly. Thanks for being on, buddy.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track in delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcomed. If you have any comments on the show or would like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshits, so you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be